Hello, everybody. So, welcome to today's program. The Calcutta Heritage Collective is very happy and proud to present its very first digital book launch with a book that resonates with the kind of heritage that we are also proud of and that we wish to promote. This book, as you've seen in the visual that was presented just before this, is called Adda, the College Street Coffee House. And it's a marvelous compilation of photographs by the photographer Mala Mukherjee and text by Yael Silliman, who has spent hours talking to and tracking down some of the regulars of the coffee house from the 50s right through till the 90s. And we're looking forward to this program very much this evening. Before we begin, just a few words for those of you who've joined us who may not know about the Calcutta Heritage Collective. This collective is just a group of citizens of Calcutta who are passionate about heritage. And we got together in 2018 to pool our resources, pool our ideas and our skills and talents to try and promote an awareness and love, regenerate a love for our heritage, built heritage, architectural heritage, which is absolutely intrinsically bound up with cultural heritage. So today, this book, in fact, speaks beautifully to both an architectural space, the space of the Calcutta Coffee House, which as a place to go to, as a site on which to converge, has been a very, very major part of the intellectual, artistic, cultural development of the city in some of the most important decades that have formed what is known as the typical Calcutta spirit. And along with being an architectural space, it has also been a very, very vibrant cultural community space, which I think is going to emerge even as everybody talks and shares their memories. The sense of community, the sense of a space that belongs to anybody who wished to come there, sit there, share their time and their thoughts with each other. So before we actually move on to the discussion and the adda for today, I'd like to do the digital book launch by inviting all of us, the panelists and the authors, to please hold up their books so that we can all see it on the screen and celebrate the launch of this book, Adda, the Calcutta Coffee House, the College Street Coffee House. We're going to learn a little more about this coffee house as we go on because the authors will also speak to us about their journey through why they did thought of the book, how it came about, how they went about doing it, and the spine of the book, which is the photographs that flow through it and actually hold the whole thing together. Before we launch into inviting our four very, very esteemed panelists, and we are delighted to have them with us, only the Zoom platform makes it possible for us to be sitting as far away as Goa and Delhi and different areas of Calcutta and still be able to connect, not just Zoom, but I mean is the virtual platform, but it's still able to connect and share our discussion together in a kind of virtual adda. We have with us today Shuva Prashanna, our veteran visual artist, painter, arts personality of the city, Partho Ghosh, a leading scientist and one of those rare people who's been able to lead a life which interweaves not just the sciences but also the creative field, music, theater, cinema, as we'll see when we come to his more detailed biography. Dhritiman Chatterjee, who is a familiar face to many people because of his on-screen presence, but who has also had a very, very long career in advertising, in public communication, and in filmmaking, not just acting in front of the camera, though many of you will recognize him from that. And Rudrangshu Mukherjee, historian, academic, and also known to many as somebody who held up and held down the editorial pages of the Telegraph for many, many years. So we're very happy to have them with us. We also have with us Mala Mukherjee, veteran photographer, who is the spirit and moving force behind the book, and Yael Silliman, the co-author who has done all the text for the book. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome, all of you. And now that we have sort of officially launched the book, I would like to just mention before we begin that there are many people in this book, interviewed in this book, and it's a delightful compilation of memories and anecdotes. Some of them are unfortunately no longer with us. Between the time when they were actually approached to do the book and were able to contribute their pieces, and today, we have lost quite a few people. And I'd like to start by just paying a tribute to some of the stalwarts who are no longer here with us. Soumitra Chatterjee, the veteran actor, Krishna Bose, politician, and very, very major presence with the Netaji Research Bureau. Nobunita Dev Sen, a beloved teacher of mine, but also one of Bengal's leading literateurs, writers, poets. Robin Mondol, major artist who played such an important role in shaping contemporary art in Bengal, and Usha Ganguly, the theatre personality whose group Rangakarmi is one of the Hindi groups that has made a huge mark in the Bengali theatre. Calcutta. We will miss them. If they had been here with us, I think we would have had the pleasure of seeing them on this panel. And we hope that they rest in peace wherever they are. I would like to now initiate the Adda by inviting Shubho Prasanna, to speak to us a little bit. Just before we begin the actual conversation, I'd like to just introduce Shubho Prasanna because as we have an audience from all over the world for today, it's not clear that everybody may know what a preeminent position he holds in all our presence, in our presence and our hearts in Calcutta. Shubhoda is an artist, a visual artist. He's also founder member of Art and Artists group in Calcutta, and he was also a member of the Calcutta Painters group. He was a founder of the College of Visual Arts and Arts Acre, which was a pioneering concept of an artist village in just on the outskirts of Calcutta, the foundation stone of which was laid by Ravi Shankar and the inauguration of which was done by Gunter Grass. Over 60 solo exhibitions under his belt, all over the country as well as abroad. He has also written, edited, and published books on the arts. And later, some years after Arts Acre began, it was reconfigured as an Arts Acre Museum of Bengali Modern Art and an international center for creativity and cultural vision in Newtown, again, a newly developing area of Calcutta. This has one of the biggest collections of Bengali modern art, and it remains as a tremendous monument to Shubhoda's dedication to the arts and to Bengal art in particular. Shubhoda, when I was reading your reminiscences of your relationship with the coffee house, you mentioned that between the 1960s, through the 1960s, right up to the 80s, when you lived on College Row, you were a coffee house regular. And even Rudrangshuda was remembering that when a little earlier in the evening, that it made it very possible for you to visit often because you lived close by. And those were years, 20 years is a long time to observe an institution like the coffee house and the changes. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention was that you have called in your contribution to the book, you've called the coffee house a unique space because it was such a cross section of creative people who met there from all the various arts. Now, this is very intriguing because if you mention the coffee house, typically people associate it with politics, that it was a place where people met to discuss politics, where the Naxals would hide out, where bombs were manufactured somewhere around the place, where the police raided at regular intervals. But you have focused on the creative addas that the coffee house had. Would you like
That's
to
true.
talk a little bit about that aspect of the coffee house that you remember, and some anecdotes of your memories of any particular addas or people you met there?
No, actually, you hear me?
Yes, yes,
Hello?
we can.
Okay. Actually, Nirmallo Acharya, Soumitra Chattopadhyay, uh, they used to sit almost every day and to meet, and they both were the editor of Ekhon. And on the other hand, Shakti Chattopadhyay, and then Shunilda, and many other people. But that my actually association with that radical the humanist, that Shivnarayan Roy, because I'm quite close with Jigasha publication, because regularly Shivda used to organize exhibition, seminar, poetry reading, and etc. So firstly, that building itself, it's a most historical building, one of our heritage building. One side is Aurobindo Library, and lots of book publishers. There is Rupa. There is so many other very well-known publishers, and the second floor is full of coffee house and the balcony. So that was the atmosphere, that whenever you were there, you could see some most interesting people, most creative people, the academician from Presidency College, from even the other college also, Scottish Church College, even some school, the boys is also from Hindu school, and etc. So always there is at least more than 150, 200 people, and it was smoky. It was something. Everybody is actually explaining and talking and gossiping, and in between they are doing their creative work. It's a unimaginable atmosphere. And in between also, sometimes Shamlan Dotto was there. We used to meet with other people, like even the great dancer used to come. I forget the name. Her daughter also a very well-known dancer.
You're
So
talking about Monjushri Chaki Sarkar.
Manjusri Chaki Sarkar and
Yes.
everybody. It was like that. Uh, Even after that, Nakshal time, during the Nakshal time, Ashim Chatterjee used to come, and it was also bad time. Somebody tried to attack Shaktida with the blade, and for a couple of hours, it was completely under a terrorist atmosphere. So this was my experience, and particularly those days. That time, my beard was not gray, or white. It was completely black, and my hair also quite heavy. So I was like that. Uh, uh, this is my memory
So
about.
do you
And
remember?
as I told you, that I born in College Street,
Right.
and brought up in College Street, and I studied in Hindu school. So most of the friends, and during those days, and after that, when I passed from art college and etc., and associated with Jigasha, particularly the Shivnaran Rai's and etc., the group. This was the thing.
Right.
This particularly book is very, very good. It's a very good produced book. It's a very good layout. The photograph is beautiful. And also the text is very easy. And I hope that people could think about the time and about the culture, about the Calcutta's intellectual through this book. I hope that people will read it, but only think couple of people I missed, particularly Shushil Bhadro. He used to live there. He was a great intellectual, and he was the person who actually used to publish regularly. When Shivnaran Rai was in Australia and Melbourne, he who actually used to publish regularly, and he was like Southeast Asia, like Vietnamese or something in face, but he's so nice, saint-like person. But we missed, because that Shi Guho, that radical humanism, humanist room, then Jigasha, then Rupa Publisher, Coffee House, then the whole posters in the Dewal. Anybody can put their whether it is political, where is any sort of protest and etc., you could see there, because that is also kind of a collage which we miss today, because those days people used to write by hand on newspaper. So it was a typical time. I'm always feeling as a chairman Heritage Commission. I am also thinking, because though in this moment we are only looking after the heritage building, monuments, but heritage is not only the buildings and etc. We already did the website, where you could see the every part of our country, whether it is Bardhaman or in every district, where
So
the
are you thinking
speciality.
of adding? Are you thinking of adding something for the coffee house as well? From the Heritage
Yes. It is
That's
very, very
wonderful.
important, and maybe one day we will try to publish the more detail, whether in website or whatever it is, because you already send some sort of amendments, and I think by this next assembly that will be passed, and then we could manage to do many more things. So naturally, this is my because so many friends today, because after so long, because I know Rudrangshu, I know so many times I met, and so many dialogue before left in Delhi. It was a regular almost meeting, also some fight, and Ritiman, I know since long time. When he was in Calcutta, I used to go, because there is many stories, and other and I know very much the Thema. There's a beautiful shop, unbelievable. The Kalyanidhi, Partho Babu, everybody is so known, and through Mala and through Jill, this happened. I'm so happy. I think I like to hear other friends' voice.
Thank you very much, Shubhoda. Thank you. I'd like to invite Parthoda now. Parthuda, your time in the coffee house was almost the same stretch of time, I think, as Shubhoda's was. But before we invite you to speak, let me sort of introduce Parthu Ghosh. Many of you would have seen him on television as one of the sort of most popular presenters of science programs. He is an honorable MBE.
Unbelievable program.
Yes, very, very, I mean, a pioneering kind of work, certainly. So he's an honorable MBE, former professor at SN Bose National Center for Basic Sciences, a fellow of the National Academy of Sciences and the West Bengal Academy of Science and Technology, a physicist actually in his scientific training, but also a prolific author and music aficionado and musician, and as we've already mentioned, anchor on television. He popularized modern science in a way nobody else has really done. He got the National Award for the Best Science and Technology Coverage in Mass Media of the NCST STC in 1986 to 1990, and the Indira Gandhi Prize by the Indian National Science Academy. But apart from all this work in science, it's amazing that he's also found so much time to direct plays, to make appearances in film. For example, The Quantum Indians, which is a film about the Indian scientists, and which was a national award winner. Music is another great interest. He's done a major work with Rabindra Sangeet and Tagore's music and philosophy, as well as Western classical music. He's written books, edited books, brought out CDs, and most recently is working on the orchestration of Tagore's music. Einstein and Tagore, for example, is an area in which he's got a couple of books published. So it was in the late 50s and the 60s when you were studying physics at Presidency College, Parthuda, and you have also mentioned that what you found was fascinating and what you enjoyed particularly about coffee house addas was the how across disciplines it went. You were from a science background, but there were people, your friends who you met there were from many different disciplines. And you mentioned that it was quite an apolitical kind of a free rolling adda, which went across cinema and philosophy and all sorts of the arts. So can you, like Shubhoda has created a little sense of the kind of atmosphere, that the buzzing atmosphere that was there. Can you share your memories and particular anecdotes that you have about the college Coffee Street Adda, Coffee House Adda, sorry?
Yes. Well, I think Shubha Babu has painted a wonderful picture, and there's very little that I can add to it because he's captured all the speciality of the place so well. I was brought up in St. Xavier's School and then college, and I went to Presidency when I was actually studying physics honors. I shifted from St. Xavier's to Presidency, and that was a fantastic experience because St. Xavier's in our time was a very disciplined kind of place. But I found in Presidency College a completely different environment, more stimulating. There was that intellectual flavor about it. And all that was actually reflected in the addas in the coffee house. People, it was fashionable in our time to bunk the past classes. So people were only interested in the honors lectures, and they would somehow gravitate to the coffee house. And I found friends from the English department, chemistry, many other areas of economics. And that atmosphere was something very new to me, coming from St. Xavier's. I must admit that. And I really lapped it up. It was fabulous. As Babu has said, while entering, everything was covered by all kinds of writings and all kinds of styles. It was a collage. And as I went up the stairs, I could hear the din. There was a real din coming up from the floor and rising. And the smoke and the gatherings and the bearers going round. It was fabulous. It's just something that I have never ever seen anywhere. And I went back there a couple of years ago. It's still there, but somehow or other, maybe it's the age, which was a problem for me because I couldn't recognize anybody there. So I didn't kind of connect. But that may be just my age. So, yes, and as Shubha Babu has said, I used to regularly see Soumitra Babu and
Tell me,
yes,
Parthuda, what if you were to be asked now, what did you feel was the most valuable thing that you gained or took away from those experiences at the coffee house? What would you say it was? Looking back on the culture of that time from now.
The opening up of the mind into a
It's
vast
true.
universe.
It's
So
true.
many things.
Very true.
Right. And opening up of the mind across disciplines and across
Yes.
different kinds of. Tell me,
And
did you also come across?
That is what has stayed with me all my life.
Yes,
that is what has stayed with me.
Yeah. Wow. And did you also feel that there was an ability to accept different points of view? I mean, we've heard so much about debate and discussion happening there. Did you feel that there was an ability to argue, really discuss in a way, in a healthy way, where you were able to listen to each other?
That was the whole basis of all the Addas, the different viewpoints. And people were tolerant. We would argue. But we were never dismissive of the other points of view.
Right.
And I think I gained tremendously.
Yeah. I think it's a very precious aspect of our heritage, this ability to actually argue and listen to different points of view without.
Now, coming back, I think that a formal college with a coffee house of that type across the road was the ideal combination.
Right.
You can't get that just in a college or in a coffee house.
Right.
Another just a point I like to add, because the Shomik Banerjee, then Hiranmoy Karlikar, and N. Vishwanathan, it's unbelievable debater, and they were also in that area. They used to come, they used to speak, and they could speak so nicely in Bengali and English both. And even before the starting of the debate, they had no idea that who is which side. But they used to speak, and it's so beautiful. And particularly in Overtoun, that YMCA Overtoun Hall, that is no more now. But that is now a bank building. But there was a beautiful hall Overtoun where the debate used to, organized by some organization and etc. That was the era.
Yeah. Thank you, Shubhada. Parthuda, would you like to add anything, or should I move on to asking Dhritiman Chatterjee to share his thoughts with us?
I think you can move on unless you have something very specific to ask.
We'll have, I hope, an opportunity for more chat after this. Dhritiman Chatterjee, as we've already introduced, is somebody who has had a very, very long career in not just in acting, but also in advertising and public communications. We know that he's worked with some of the iconic directors of the country. You know that he's worked with Satyajit Ray, Mrinal Sen, Apurna Sen. He's also done films with Deepa Mehta, Jane Campion. So there's a long list of his film credits, and also he's had an equally long and very active career in advertising and public communication. I'd like to ask Dhritiman Chatterjee about his experience of the coffee house. You mentioned that you were a student between 63 and 65. Those were decades when both Parthoda and Shubhoda would have been in and out of the coffee house as well. And you were very much there as a student. You started your student life at the as a student of engineering in Shibpur at the Bengal Engineering College. But you mentioned that you were so attracted by the atmosphere of the coffee house, partly along with the kind of vibrancy of intellectual life that you saw in Presidency, that you actually left and decided to enroll yourself in Presidency College and to study there. So, can you tell us a little bit about, what was it that drew you to this new environment, making you actually shift colleges, and also what are some of your favorite memories of the coffee house? Any particular stories you may have to share with us?
Yeah. But let me start off by saying that I do feel a little intimidated at being on the same platform with very accomplished and distinguished people. Obviously, I can't compare with them in those fields. My actual contact with the coffee house was when I was much younger. My uncle, I used to go to I used to spend a lot of time at my grandparents' place, which was at the crossing of Central Avenue and Ganesh Chandra Avenue. And my uncle used to be at the Central Avenue coffee house with luminaries like Utpal Datta, Shekhar Chattopadhyay, and so on. So I was sent by my grandmother sometimes to drag my uncle home for lunch. So that was my first contact with the coffee house. And if memory serves, I'm talking about the mid-1950s here. And if memory serves me right, there were two chambers in the Central Avenue coffee house. One which you entered from Chittaranjan Avenue, which was called the House of Commons, and one next to that, which, as I remember, had padded seats and so forth, and was probably a little more expensive, and that was called the House of Lords. So that was my first contact with the coffee house, and I sort of heard and remembered a little bit about how radical they were politically. And I sort of remember the time when the coffee house, the whole institution was going to be shut down, and the workers' agitation and the cooperative movement and all that started. Then after school, incidentally, I should feel how proud I am that Parthoda and I went to the same school. I mean, he was senior to me, of course, but both of us went to the same school. I don't know why I'm saying that, but I just felt like saying. Anyway, so after school, off I went to B college. Don't ask me why. I have no idea why I went, except my parents thought I should become an engineer. Most parents thought those days that their children should become either doctors or engineers, or at the very least accountants. So off I went to... Sorry,
No,
you were saying something, Anju.
I was going to say that you were in good company because Badal Sarkar also studied.
Sorry?
At the Badal Sarkar
Yes,
also studied at the engineering college,
yes,
like you did.
Yes, so off I went.
No, may I just interject?
Please.
There's another commonality between you and me. You
Which
went to study engineering in B college.
Right.
I went to study engineering in IIT Kharagpur, and I also left and came back.
Right. And Anjum, among Parthoda's accomplishments, you did not mention that he was and is still a very distinguished Rabindra Sangit singer. And I don't know whether he keeps that up, but certainly in school, he was a very good medium pace bowler.
Wow.
I thought I should mention that. Anyway, so off I went to B college. I don't know why. And I had this classmate who was also there. And on Saturday mornings, when it was time to come home, we got into the number 16 bus from the Botanical Gardens area and dropped off at College Street and went to the coffee house and spent the afternoon there. Now, the atmosphere was so vibrant. I had such a lot of friends there. And also, let's not forget the fact that although after school, I had got into what was nominally a co-educational college, but B college was co-educational only nominally. I think we had 2 girls in the first year. So, let me not try and deny the fact that the presence of very many interesting and attractive women was a major attraction of the coffee house. There's no point in, beating around the bush. So therefore, coffee house actually led me to Presidency College. Not that I had any ambitions to become an accomplished economist. In the event, I did not. But that was that. So that is how coffee house happened. So coffee house led me to Presidency College. Later, though, coffee house was almost responsible for my getting expelled from Presidency College. Because as Partha was saying a little earlier, in those days, you had to keep up a certain attendance percentage in class. But once you were in coffee house, you that whole thing slipped out of your mind, and you didn't know how many classes you missed. So when the exams at the end of the second year, which were then called the Part 1 exams, I don't know what they were called now, it was a major crisis, believe me. And a lot of things had to be put into motion to ensure that I, was not thrown out. You asked me about incidents. It's very difficult to remember particular incidents. I do remember that one used to look up with awe and admiration at Soumitra, who in the beginning I did not have the guts to approach. So that was one. But the main thing was meeting people from Scottish, from Calcutta Medical College, from various people, from various places, and talking about various things. One of the, in the reminiscences that Jael has recorded, and in what we have been saying a little earlier, listeners might get the impression that coffee house was a kind of a sort of a temple of academic learning. It was a university by itself. It was a place of high conversation. It is true, but I think one has to, demystify that a little bit, in the sense that you talked about a lot of things in the coffee house. You did not only talk, high philosophy and high physics and high poetry. We talked, obviously, because that's where our interests lay. I and some friends of mine talked a lot of cinema at that time. That is when as it happens, that time, the mid-60s, coincided with the advent of what later became known as the New Wave in French cinema. And the New Wave Festival was happening in Calcutta. So there was a lot of talk of various sorts of things. And I'd like to go back to a point that you made, Anjum, while introducing Shubha, that the coffee house was a place of arts and politics, of arts more than of politics. I cannot really agree, because I don't think that real art or the pursuit of arts, I don't think you can divorce that from politics. If you take all art practice, to me, all sorts of art practice is at heart a political act. If you take a broader view of what politics means. So there was, in the broader sense, there was a lot of politics. People like Ashim Chatterjee, later known as Kaka, Sudarshan Rai Chaudhuri, we were classmates. But as Parthoda was saying, the whole political atmosphere at that time was, as I'm sure we all agree, kind of left of center. There was no real extreme right-wing practice. Politics at that time was not polarized in the way that it is now. For instance, in the Presidency College itself, we had the Students' Federation. We had the Presidency College Students Association, which was slightly to the right of the SFI. And so there was discussion, but there was not the sort of polarization, viciousness, intolerance that there is now.
That you see now. Yeah.
Well, I think I've exceeded my initial quota.
No.
So
That was a very good point that you actually emphasized, Shubhnada, that it is impossible to separate out politics from actually any act of life. I mean, every single choice you make, in a sense, is governed by political thinkings. I mean, whether you know it or not. So thank you for pointing that out. Rudrangshuda, may I invite you to speak now? And before doing that, I saved you for the last because your years of being at the coffee house were the early 70s. And then you continued to go back there later when you were a teacher and a reader at Calcutta University. And so you saw the 80s into the 90s as well. So your perspective on the coffee house would be quite interesting because it's a broad span. Chancellor and Professor of History at Ashoka University, of which he was also the founding Vice Chancellor. He was a student of Presidency College, as we've said, and then JNU, where he did his MA, an INLAC scholar at Oxford University, a reader later on at Calcutta University, and then editor of the editorial pages of the Telegraph. Rudrangshuda has 5 books around the time of the revolt of 1857, a wide range of books, and also has written on Nehru and Bose. So Rudrangshuda brings to us a combination of intellectual, academic, as well as journalistic experience. And that's a very fascinating area when we think of the coffee house and the kind of atmosphere and discussions that were there. So Rudrangshuda, would you like to tell us a little bit about what it was like when you were a student? Did it change much when you went back later? What was the sort of the trajectory that you experienced there?
Anju, before I come to the 2 specific points you want me to highlight, since you have introduced me as a student of history, I would like to just make one very important point, since Shubho actually brought up the point about heritage, and this is being hosted by the Calcutta Heritage Group. So the building itself where the coffee house is located is a very important heritage building because it was the residence of Dewan Ramkamal Sen, who is the grandfather of Keshab Chandra Sen, and Dewan Ramkamal Sen is the member of the first governing body of Hindu College, which later became Presidency College. So in 1817, when the Hindu College is founded, Dewan Ramkamal Sen is a member of the governing body, and he's also one of the key persons involved in the sacking of Henry Dedosio from Hindu College. So, but Keshab grew up in that house, Keshab Sen, and Ramakrishna Paramahansa visited that house because he used to often come to Calcutta to see Keshav. And there are accounts of Ramakrishna in that house itself. That's one. And also, because Dewan Ramkamal Sen was what he was in the Hindu college, he let out a set of rooms to Captain D.L. Richardson, who joined Hindu college as the professor of English literature and then became its principal as well. So D.L. Richardson actually used to live in that house as well. So for these, on various counts, I think even if you took the coffee house out, if one could possibly do that, this building is important as a heritage building itself. So I want to just...
But Rudrangshu, just one point, that after that, that building demolishes, it's a new building one. This is not that building which...
No, only part of it was demolished. The back part of it was demolished. The facade was never demolished. The facade still remains the same as it was in Keshav's time. Okay, so I think you should check on that.
As per the design concern, this is not that time's design. That time design was a completely different, but now which we used to see.
I think we are we are digressing from the thing.
Anyhow.
So this is a piece of history. You can check it out. So as you pointed out, my association with the coffee house falls into two distinct parts. One was when I was a student at Presidency. And I actually started going to the coffee house even before I had formally become a student of Presidency, because I had a history teacher in Calcutta Boys School where I studied. In St. Xavier's, where Patho Ghosh and Sundar went, Calcutta Boys School was referred to as the Chokra Boys School. So I went to Chokra Boys School, and they had a history teacher, Ashim Chakraborty, who studied in Presidency, and he used to talk to me about...
I'm sure at that time, any boys' school other than St. Xavier.
Yes, exactly.
In one way or the other, a Chokra Boys.
Chokra Boys School, exactly. So when I decided that I would go to Presidency, and that was the only college I applied to, even though Presidency by that time had become the nerve center of the Naxalbari movement in Calcutta. So I decided I would go and recce the place, as they say. And I took that opportunity also to go to the coffee house. I think this is in the winter of 1969, 1970 that I first stepped into the coffee house. And it was, as the cliche goes, love at first sight. And much of my time in Presidency, apart from attending the classes of Ashin Dasgupta, who was the greatest teacher I have ever encountered anywhere in the world in the three great institutions I studied. Apart from attending his classes, I went to no other classes. So I had the same problem as Sundar had when it came to, it was known as being a discollegiate.
That's right.
So you had to actually fudge the books. And there was somebody called Dilip Da in the students section who fudged it for you because he really loved the students. So anyway, so I used to go to the coffee house and to the Rupa bookshop, and it was in many ways, it was a very tense time. Those were very tense times because of the pitched battles taking place between the Naxal boys, many of whom were our friends in Presidency, in fact, and the police. We had a permanent police posting in the college, in the portico itself of Presidency College.
Right.
So coffee house was a safer place then. And we used to go there, and one steaming cup of coffee for the entire afternoon. And sometimes, and this is where coffee house was not as Sundar rightly said, the place for high thinking all the time. There were some naughtiness going around there as well. So in the late afternoon, when we were a bit hungry, one of us from the table, all Presidency students, would get a hanky out and then go to each table and ask for 4 annas from the table. On the simple plea that we are hungry, we are from Presidency, we don't have money. So will you give 4 annas? Sometimes people gave 4 annas, sometimes people actually gave more. They were very generous. And so we would have about, 25, 30 rupees, and six of us across the table, then would have our mutton Afghani or our mutton dosa, whatever we wanted to eat. So that's one of the things that we did practically once a week, or sometimes even every day. So they actually knew, hey, আসছে presidency college ছেলেরা রুমাল নিয়ে। that was one. Actually, we were poor. I mean, sometimes we bought a cup of coffee and shared it between 2 or 3 of us, So the great joke was a cup coffee, ekta Siddhartha. So Siddhartha meaning Siddhartha Shankar Roy, who was considered the great bluff of that time. So you got a empty cup of coffee. So this is part of coffee house humor. The other thing I'd like to point out, Sundar rightly pointed out about cinema, which was his time, the new wave. In our time, what was more discussed, at least in our group and in part on other tables as I overheard them, was theater. This is the time, early 1970, 1971, when Utpal Datta was producing Tiner Talwar, when Ajitesh was producing Tin Paishar Pala, Manjuri, Amer Manjuri, Bohurupi was producing Adalat Cholche, and so on. So these were all Sher Afghan, particularly, I remember, caught our imagination at that point of time.
And just before that, Rudhanshu, since you started talking of theatre, when I was there, Naট্যকারে সন্ধানে
ছটি চরিত্র, the first Pirandello play to be actually translated into Bengali. Ajitesh did that. Right. And the great attraction was, of course, as you entered the coffee house, one of the great theatre personalities sat on the first table to your left as you entered it. That was Rudra Prasad Sengupta. So you saw him on stage, and then you saw him in the morning or in the afternoon sitting there with his group of friends. And that's how I got to know Rudra Prasad Sengupta, actually, in the coffee house. Okay. So
incidentally, Rudra and Kea used to be there even in our time.
Yes, exactly. Earlier on, when they were students.
And one small mistake I found in the book is Kea it's written Kea Chatterjee. I think she was Chakraborty, right?
Kea Chakraborty.
Correction should be done.
Yeah. So
okay.
Kea came from Scottish, and Rudra came from Damdam Motijil College. So, but both of them were, I don't think, like many of us, they attended classes. They spent most of their time in the coffee house. That was the university from which they learned. Right. So that was one aspect of the coffee house when I was a student. And when I became a teacher in Calcutta University, the history department was actually located in Hazra Road. But I was very fortunate that I was invited by Rajat Rai, who was then heading the history department at Presidency, to take a teacher's course, one paper on modern India, 2 papers actually, modern India and Tudor and Stuart Britain, to the undergraduates of Presidency. And I arranged so that I could teach every Saturday, because I wasn't teaching at the university on Saturday. So I used to go every Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning, teach till about 11:30. And then at 11:30, I would move to the coffee house. Now, here is where the difference was. By that time, I had become, even though he was years my senior, he was introduced to me by my father. I had come to know Nirmala Acharya very well. And Nirmala Babu, the coffee house and Nirmala Babu were inseparable. He normally had one of the window tables. There were 2 French windows to the right as you entered. He had one of those tables. He used to sit there. So I used to go and join him and sit with him. And then, of course, one didn't have to pass the handkerchief round. So, we would normally have pakoras or toast and coffee, innumerable cups of coffee. About Nirmala Acharya and the inseparability of him in the coffee house, I must tell you this anecdote. We had a friend. He was 2 years my senior, but a very close friend of mine in Presidency. Alas, he's dead now, untimely. Kullan Shannal, who was an economist. He studied economics in Presidency and then taught in Calcutta University. So the first time, one of the very early times I went into coffee house with Kullan, and Nirmala Babu was at his usual table. So I knew Nirmala Babu by sight, but I hadn't still been introduced to him. Kullan said, "Tui ki bhabchish ota Nirmala Acharya?" So I said, "Nirmala Acharya hi to ota." তুই কি বলছিস আমায়? ওটা ওটা নির্মল আচার্য নয়, নির্মল আচার্যের একটা স্ট্যাচু এখানে তৈরি করা আছে, রোজ সকালবেলা ওটা ওখানে ওরা বসিয়ে দেয় আর সবাই ভাবে ওটা নির্মল আচার্য। That was Kollan's wit. So, you know, and I would sit at Nirmala Acharya's table, very fortunate. A lot of people would come by there, contributors to Ekon. Very occasionally Soumitra Chatterjee, I mean, once in a year or something like that.
Right.
And Nirmala Acharya edited the whole of Ekon sitting at that table.
Yeah, yeah.
Commissioning articles, reading the proofs, doing everything, laying out the pages. So
Actually, I'm going to, since you mentioned Soumitra Da's haunt really was, if I remember correctly, Boshu Street Coffee House.
Boshu Street Coffee House, yes.
Whereby hangs another tale, which we can discuss on another occasion.
On another Adda. Okay.
Yes, Boshu Street Coffee House.
Yeah, I would.
The coffee house at Purno Cinema. That was the kind of South Calcutta axis.
And the Jadavpur Coffee House.
That's right.
So I will end with just two anecdotes, which will give you a brief glimpse of the kind of place the coffee house was. One is hearsay. I wasn't obviously witness to that. By the time we entered the coffee house, as Sundar was saying, a lot of very intelligent girls were around sitting in the coffee house from various colleges and the university. But I was told that one of the earliest girls to start visiting the coffee house regularly, and most certainly the first girl to smoke in the coffee house, was Shipra Sarkar, who was the legendary teacher of history at Jadavpur University, the daughter of the legendary teacher of history at Presidency, Shubhon Sarkar. So that's an interesting anecdote, how Shipra Devi was a trendsetter, not just in teaching, but in other ways as well. The other story is not directly related to the coffee house, but it's one of my favorite anecdotes about the kind of place the coffee house was, though this encounter did not take place in the coffee house. I forget, it was 1973 or something like that. Some posh friend of Doita and myself having their wedding anniversary, a little senior to us, and they invited us for dinner to Blue Fox with Pam Crane singing and all that. So in the middle of all this, while dinner and drinks were being consumed, I got up to go to the loo. And in the semi-darkness of Blue Fox, from behind a pillar, somebody said, "Hey!" So I turned around. He asked me. I saw it was Keshto, or who we called Keshta, the famous young waiter of the coffee house. So I said, "তুই এখানে কি করছিস?" বললো, "আমি না রাত্রে এখানে এসে কাজ করি, কফি হাউস বন্ধ হয়ে যাওয়ার পর। তুই কিন্তু কাউকে বলিস না তোর সঙ্গে এখানে আমার দেখা হয়েছিল, তাহলে কিন্তু আমার কফি হাউসের চাকরিটা চলে যাবে।" আমি বললাম, "তুইও কাউকে বলিস না যে তুই আমার ব্লু ফক্সে দেখেছিস, তাহলে আমার প্রেস্টিজে গ্যামাক্সিন পড়ে যাবে যে আমি ব্লু ফক্সে আসি।" তো he said, না 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 না, ঠিক আছে, ভালো আছিস তো, কাল সকালে দেখা হবে কফি হাউসে। So that was a facet of the coffee house. So the waiters, to earn a little bit of extra money, actually I worked on Park Street in the evening. And here I should add, I have visited the coffee house at various points of the day, but I have never given Adda in coffee house to this day after 5:30 or 6 in the evening. I'm told it was and still is a completely different place.
That's right.
Right. Okay, thank you so much. That's really been a fascinating compilation of memories and anecdotes. We're almost out of time, but I would like to invite Mala Mukherjee and Yael Silliman to talk to us about the book. Maladi, I believe you have more to share with us, to tell us a little bit about how you thought of this book while you show us the slides. Can we look at the slides now? And Yael, maybe you'd like to also mention some of the interesting aspects of working on this book.
After Mala shows the slides? Yes. Okay, this is
Right, we've started.
Shall I start?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Good evening. This is the view of the coffee house building. I grew up in central Calcutta, not very far from the building. Used to go there to buy books during my school days. Not inside the building, but ground floor, there are a lot of shops. You can see still those shops. And occasionally we used to go to Guha studio to get photographed. I never went to coffee house. It never occurred to me also. Then I shifted to South Calcutta during my college days and university days. And that time also never went to coffee house. Then I was away from Kolkata 30 years and came back to Kolkata in 2000. I'll show you the photograph which I took after 2000. Next one, please. Yes, this was the famous, the previous one, please. Yes. This was the famous Sigua studio. His son, Shamol Guha, eventually converted that into a gallery where he used to exhibit photographs. And there was, it calls Boichitro, where they sell books also. And this is occasion which I attended. It was on the Bengal's photography day. And our famous senior most photographer, Arun Ganguly, was delivering lecture to the audience about the Bengal's photography day. We have featured him in our book, and he has given us a photograph also to publish in our book. Can I go to the next one? I was away, as I said, I was away from Kolkata for 30 years. When we came back, I started going to coffee house with my husband, who used to spend a lot of time during his college days. And I felt like going back to my college canteen, though it was much bigger, and not only the students, there were other people also from different fields of work. And this is the photograph which I took in 2005. Can I go to the next one? Yes, this is the photograph of Iftar, the cooperative society member, those who are the owner of coffee house now. They were having Iftar in front of their office room. Actually, they live in the same building behind that coffee house. Actually, I went to see the photography exhibition at Sri Guha studio by Abhik Mitra. And over there, it came into my mind, why not publish a book on coffee house? I talked to him, and then I talked to Yael, with whom I have collaborated a book that time. And Yael was excited about it. And then we talked to different publishers, and we finished the book almost in 2 years with my photographs from archive. And I took a lot of photographs during those 2 years. And Avik helped us in very many ways by introducing us to the bearers and taking us to the coffee house also. I have got other photographs of Avik in our book. Next one, please. This photograph I took in 2020, and I think it was renovated in 2008, and Buddhadev Bhattacharya was behind it. He used to spend a lot of time in coffee house also. And now the people are sitting there even today from 11 to 7, it's open. A lot of people are there all the time. And sometimes you will not find a place to sit also. And I have used this photograph for our book cover. And Bibhash Bhattacharya, son of Bikash Bhattacharya, helped me a lot throughout my making of this book. He edited all the photographs. He is the one who selected the photographs for the book. This is one of his selection for the book cover. Can I go to the next one? Yes, in 2005, this was the character of the wall of the staircase. But now you cannot use these posters whenever you feel like to put it there. You have to take permission from the coffee house secretary. Now they have painted the wall. Can I go to the next one? This is the present. This I took in 2020. The character of the posters have changed actually. Lot of colors. And nobody can put any poster now. Can I go to the next one? You see, this is one of the staff. His name is Ram Sanjeevan, and he is known as Sanjuda. His father, probably some of you knew him very well, Ramuda.
Ramuda.
Yes, this is Ramuda's son. So Ramuda started working from the day one. Apparently, he used to work for the coffee board. When they lost the job, this coffee house started and he started working. And later on, Sanjuda also started working there. Can I go to the next one? Since I did not find any photograph before 2000, I requested Arun Ganguly to give me a photograph from 1970s. So this is the photograph of 1970s. And when I first came back to Calcutta in 2000, I didn't see much difference between the 1970s and 2000. So it remained almost the same. Can I go to the next one? Okay. As you know, there were many luminaries, frequent visitors of coffee house in their days who are no longer with us. I knew Nominita Devshen very closely, but she fell so ill that I did not have heart to ask her for an interview for our project on the coffee house. It was her daughter, Antara, shared some of her mother's memories of the coffee house, which we have used in Adda. Can I go to the next slide? Yes. There are painters, poet, and filmmaker. This is Nirendranath Chakraborty, the poet. Mrinal Sen, I believe he never went frequently, but he has been there a couple of times. And of course, Jogenda used to go there. So as Ganesh Pine, and of course, Bikash Bhattacharya used to go there quite often. Can I go to the next slide? Yes, this is Krishna Bose. We were lucky to be able to interview Mrs. Krishna Bose. She was among very early women students who visited the coffee house during her breaks from her classes. Sadly, she passed away last year. Next slide, please. This is a famous painter, Robin Mondol. We were able to take his interview at his house a few months before he passed away last year. Next one, please. This is Usha Ganguly, the famous theatre personality. Just last year, she was so full of vigor when we met her at the theatre school. Alas, she is no more. Next one, please. I'll end this presentation with this portrait of Soumitra Chatterjee. He gave us permission to use the memories, his memories of coffee house for our book. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maladi.
Thank
And
you.
Yael, can you add something very briefly to your
Sure. I just want to say for me, it was a really wonderful journey. As you can see from the people who you met today, that the people who went to the coffee house were truly Renaissance people. They were giants in so many fields. And I had the opportunity through this book to meet many of them and to learn so much about a part of Calcutta that I didn't know. So it was a great honor. I think that we have 26 people in this book featured. It was really, it would be wonderful to have an opportunity to hear more of them speak. But I think the people who have spoken today, I hope have given people a taste of the wonderful energy and space that the coffee house was and what a large role it played in Calcutta's social, political, and cultural history. I'll stop there because I know we're running out of time and I was hoping there'd be some time for questions, Anju. Anju? Hello?
It's frozen.
Who's frozen?
Anju.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. That was my internet connection. Well, thank you. We have overshot our allotted time only by about 10 minutes, which I think is a miracle, given the subject matter and given the format, which is really meant to be an Adda. I particularly enjoyed when all of you commented on each other and interjected and added little bits of information. And that's what made it a particularly enjoyable discussion. So thank you so much to each and every panelist. Shubhoda, thank you for staying with us and contributing. Thank you, Parthoda. Thank you, Shundarda. And thank you, Rudrangshuda, for being here with us and for spending so much time. We wish the book well. Malati and Yael, may this book, which has started with this wonderful initiative of a book launch. We hope that it continues to fly off the shelves or fly into people's rooms and minds, because I think eventually the kind of values that the people talk about when they remember their coffee house days are values that are desperately needed today once again. The values of the ability to spend time in real conversation, engaging with ideas, taking them seriously, and also being able to listen to diverse opinions. So thank you very much. And on behalf of the Calcutta Heritage Collective, I would like to once again thank the team that has put this all together, Shubham for all the technical support, and every member of Cal Heritage Collective who's worked behind the scenes. As I said, one of the most rehearsed, for us at least, technical part of it, sort of events that I've been part of. So I think we'll end tonight by thanking all of you for coming and attending.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anju. Thank you, Yael. Thank you, Malati.
Thank you to all the people who are listening in from all over the place. It was really great to have you with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.